It is a pleasure to be with you all today. My name is Adefemi Akinsoya. I am international correspondent at Arise News. You may have heard of it, you may not have heard of it. I can't speak for you all, but it is a pleasure to be here. This is, of course, the very beginning of High Level Week of United Nations General Assembly, the 80th edition of it, and it is my pleasure to be with you here today. So to remind you, I will be bringing to the stage now the actual person who will be formally declaring these proceedings open. That is, of course, Ambassador Nura Abarumi, who is the Permanent Secretary to the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment for the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Once again, I ask you to put your hands together for him.
It is a great honor for me to welcome you to the Nigeria Investment Day 2025, convened here in New York on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. This special gathering, themed Risk, Reform, Return, reflects both Nigeria's aspiration and its determination to present a candid, forward-looking narrative of our economic transformation. Nigeria Investment Day 2025 is therefore more than a platform to showcase opportunities. It is an affirmation of our openness, readiness, and unwavering commitment to genuine partnerships. The chosen themes, reform, risk, reform, return, is deliberate. It speaks to three interlinked realities of our investment journey. Risk, acknowledging that all investment carry uncertainties, particularly in dynamic emerging markets undergoing structural transformations like ours. Reform, underscoring the bold and courageous decisions and at times difficult policy measures Nigeria has implemented to stabilize the macroeconomic environment, strengthen fiscal discipline, and promote private sector growth. Return, affirming that these reforms are already creating tangible, bankable opportunities that deliver competitive and sustainable value for investors. Together, let us convert risk into reforms, and reforms into sustainable returns, ensuring that every investment in Nigeria is not only competitive and predictable, but also impactful. On this note, I warmly welcome you once again and encourage all of us to engage deeply throughout today's sessions. Thank you very much, and God bless us all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here this morning. Governors here present, the Governor of Lagos State, Mr. Governor, my state, thank you for being here. And just to thank the honorable ministers who are here, some are still making their way here, particularly those that will be spotlighting today, and other governors who are also will be joining us during the course of the day. Our partners, the president of AFC, thank you for being here. I'd like to especially thank my counterpart from the UAE for being here. It's a pleasure. We already had a bilateral, and looking forward to delivering for our people. Senior government officials here present, Hajia Hadiza Bala Usman, the Permanent Secretary, Karim, Sidelines, just friends of Nigeria, Flour Mills, John. It's really a delight to see you all here today. It's a day that's going to be full of different activities, and this particular segment, it's my pleasure to just speak a bit to why we're here. This discussion is guided by the theme, risk, reform, and return. And today's gathering is designed to move beyond announcements into bankable partnerships. And the theme signals that Nigeria is not only rewriting the risk equation with bold reforms, but is also offering predictable returns and genuine partnership opportunities. So just to mention Nigeria's fundamentals, Nigeria is West Africa's largest economy and consumer market of 230 million people today, projected to be 320 million by 2040. We were having a discussion on numbers just before we started this, with a median age of 18 and over 58% under 30 years old. So this gives Nigeria one of the deepest talent pools globally. And we're also a natural hub for trade between Africa, the Americas, Asia, with 44 distinct natural resources. 5 of the 9 tech unicorns are of Nigerian extraction. We have the largest oil reserves in Africa and 210 trillion cubic feet of proven gas reserves. Now, these fundamentals are not just numbers. They're the foundation on which our reforms sit and the reasons that the reforms matter. Since mid-2023, under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's Renewed Hope agenda, Nigeria has embarked on one of the boldest economic resets in its history. We unified our exchange rates, removed fuel subsidies, modernized our tax and customs regimes, and strengthened fiscal oversight. We overhauled our trade and investment policies, and these include a full AfCFTA implementation, that's the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, a national single window project for trade facilitation, a new Investment and Securities Act, an upgraded PPP framework, and modernized bilateral investment treaties. We have engineered the scaffolding for long-term capital to thrive. This is where reforms meet bankability and where policy certainty becomes predictable returns. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is leading Nigeria's economic transformation with a renewed Hope 8-point agenda, which prioritizes food sovereignty, energy sufficiency, infrastructure renewal, industrialization, job creation, inclusivity, and improved access to capital. And what you see here is not just a random list, but a national roadmap. Each priority is backed by a bankable pipeline. Now, for priority sectors, agriculture and food security, Nigeria has 71 million hectares of arable land, yet only 46% is cultivated. Our special agro-industrial zones are reducing post-harvest losses by up to 40% and linking farmers directly to processing and export hubs. So for natural resources, and the Honorable Minister will speak about the critical minerals shortly, we have $700 billion worth of beneficiation and security regime, and digital economy and access to capital. We also have the Honorable Minister who will speak to that shortly.
Can kindly sit down, please. You know, when we have a supremely competent minister like Dr. Jumoke, she has made the job a lot easier for us. They have done the talking. My duty is to applaud her, to celebrate her. She has already sold Nigeria to the world. Mr. Governor, honorable ministers, our head girl, Hadiza Bala Usman, our brother from the UAE, the AFC Managing Director, my very good friend, Mr. John Comantoros, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It gladdens my heart to come and rub minds with the friends of Nigeria. On behalf of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, I wish to warmly welcome each and every one of you to this event. This event is about selling Nigeria. It is also about selling Africa. And Nigeria has never pretended that there is an alternative to building a structure that guarantees partnerships. There is no substitute for a framework that coordinates the exchange of ideas, capital, and technology. For only such a structure redeems the welfare of our people. In this interconnected age, the wealth of any nation is not achieved through miracle. Neither is it inherited. It is engineered, and it is born of deliberate collaborations that turn risk into reforms and reforms into returns. Here in our midst is the Minister of Investment of the UAE, one of the fastest growing economies in Asia. It wasn't a miracle. It was deliberate efforts that turned a desolate desert into a mecca for tourism. Honorable Minister, well done for doing an authentic job. Nigeria offers a vista of opportunities. Beyond being the largest economy in West Africa, we are the largest consumer market in Africa, with 236 million people and growing. And by 2050, we will be the third most populous nation on earth. We are going to surpass the United States. And the beauty of the Nigerian nation is that our median age is 16.9, with 58% of our population below the age of 30. So the anticipated demographic bulge, we can turn them into demographic dividends, not the much feared demographic disaster that will consume all of us, no. I always cite the statement by comparing a global consultancy firm that said that by 2035 there will be 65 million global talent deficits. The United States, Russia, and Brazil will each suffer from 6 million talent deficits. And Nigeria is in a unique position to tap into these potentials. There are more English-speaking people in Nigeria than in India. And last year, India generated over $100 billion from BPO alone. And what was the highest we have ever earned from the process of oil? The highest Nigeria has ever earned from the process of oil was $25 billion under President Jonathan in 2011. So Nigeria provides hope. It provides a vista of opportunities. Our proximity to Europe is an advantage. And our English, I was born, bred, buttered, and trusted right in the heart of my degree in northeastern Nigeria. I was educated in Nigeria, but I believe my English. Mr. John, I think you can get me there when I'm talking. So I ask you, in President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, you have a friend, you have an ally, who speaks your language, the language of commerce, who understands the dynamics of modern business, who was educated here in the United States. And he's a man of courage and conviction. Hitherto, previous governments were just pushing the ball down the corridor. Nobody was willing to bite the bullet. Nobody was willing to take risks. In our first day in office, He took the greatest gamble that any Nigerian leader had ever taken in the past 50 years. It wasn't part of his speech. It was at the inauguration ceremony that he announced the withdrawal of fuel subsidy. And we know the consequences of unveiling a masquerade. The fuel subsidy scam industry in Nigeria is a very humongous industry with very huge watches. But he said, let me take the bullet from day one. The collapse of the multiple exchange rate regime that provided room for a lot of shady practices. So that you don't even need to go and engage in any productive activity like the flour mills of Nigeria are doing. No. All you need to do is to get to know the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. And within 3 months, you will be a billionaire. Fundamentally, it's for you to get the forex as the official exchange rate, do the round tripping, and smile your way to the banks on the agonies of the people. But now, the collapse of the multiple exchange rate regime has revitalized the Nigerian economy. And let me tell you a short story. The story of an oil palm called Presco. 2 years ago, Presco's share was hovering in the neighborhood of 300, 400 naira per share. Now, because all the Nestle's, the Cadbury's, all the confectionaries, the Indomie makers have resorted to procuring their oil palm products locally, the share of Presco has grown by 247% in the past 12 months. And Presco, their first quarter profit for this year was 58 billion naira. That goes to show the vitality of the reforms, the tax reform, and most importantly, the billion-dollar investment in infrastructure. It's rubbing on well, and I'm inviting you to come and have a piece of the action. Most of our ministers speak the language of their areas of core competence. There's a young man seated here. I'm calling him a young man in spite of the fact that some are also seeing me as a young. I'm forcing myself to be young, just like the Minister of the Industry. His name is Bosun Tijani. He was an acerbic critic of our ticket. But the president had the courage and conviction. He was shopping for the best, and he happened to be one of the best. He is now making waves in our communications subsector. It's always good to get the mix right. When a fish starts getting rotten, it starts from the head. If you put an incompetent imbecile into a very strategic ministry, it's a recipe for disaster. So with all humility, our cabinet, the cabinet of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is one of the most competent cabinets in the West African, and the African Union. I want to thank you most sincerely from the bottom of my heart on behalf of my boss, who ought to be here. I have a prepared speech, but I said, no, let me speak from the heart. Because sometimes when you speak from the heart, it conveys greater meaning and depth than reading a sterile prepared speech. So I want to thank you. I want you to continue believing in Nigeria, because the trajectory of global growth is facing Africa, and Nigeria will make or mar that transition. 1 out of every 4 black men is a Nigerian. And by 2050, 1 out of every 3 black men will be a Nigerian. And by the end of the century, 1 out of every 2 black men will be a Nigerian. Of the 10 unicorns in Africa, about 8 are in Nigeria. Name some of them for me: Andela, Flutaway, Money Point, Jumia, Ope. That's where the action is. Why do you have to go and waste your resources? Come to Nigeria. Our doors are open for business. We are ready for action. And I want to thank the likes of John Coman Toros, who believed in Nigeria, who invested in Nigeria in our darkest hours. We celebrate you, sir. We adore you. We respect you. We value and cherish that relationship. He's a second generation Nigerian American. Thank you so much, and I wish all of us well. Thank you.
We deserve a round of applause. And for those who may not know, this is actually the largest digital economy on the African continent. Following the full liberalization of telecommunication sector in Nigeria in 1999, if you're a data geek and you pay attention to the trajectory of the growth of our economy, particularly the GDP, since 1999, you'll see a steady, consistent, astronomical growth that we hadn't seen before 1999. And if you look at all the factors that went into the economy, there's only one thing you'll be able to point to, which is the ubiquitousness of the application of technology in critical sectors in Nigeria. The digital economy in Nigeria became the engine room for driving productivity and competitiveness across key sectors. Today, actually, the good news is that just before this year and before this administration, that sector used to contribute anywhere between 15 to 17% to our GDP. But today, we're tracking over 18%. And it is also beginning to actually contribute much more than oil and gas to the economy of Nigeria. We've now recorded over $1 billion worth of investment in equipment. And as you know, equipment or quality of experience is a function of equipment. But we have clarity. The government, led by Mr. President, has very strong understanding that to truly drive the growth of the digital economy, government must also come to the table to invest, which is why Mr. President has approved that we should put $2 billion into the deployment of 90,000 kilometers of fiber optic network across Nigeria. This will be the third longest fiber cable on the African continent, and of course the longest in West Africa. We've also prioritized artificial intelligence. We're one of the few countries on the African continent with a national AI strategy. For those who have been following, just 2 days ago, Nigeria released the first African government-backed large language model, which is multilingual, speaks Hausa, Yoruba, Igbo, and accented English, and is also multimodal as well. It's not just text. They actually can speak, because most LLMs are just text-based. And this is the first time an African nation will be opening this up. We've worked with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Bill Gates Foundation, to also secure some GPUs, which means we now are in the process of being able to make available some compute powers for those who are building artificial intelligence locally. We're on a strong path to changing the narrative, and that narrative for us is not just about Nigeria. It is about the entire African continent. It's why Nigeria is also playing active leadership globally. We are today the co-chair for an international advisory council that is focused on the protection of subsea cable. And most people may not know the internet that you use, 90% of it or above is actually carried on subsea cable. And Nigeria has 8 of these cables already. And we're providing global leadership at the ITU level to ensure that they can become more resilient. We've not stopped there. Nigeria today is the vice chair of ITU, the board of ITU Council. And our goal is to ensure that we can also not just influence policies for ourselves, but for the entire country as well. I think on this note, I've shared a lot, and it's clear that truly, as shared by our Vice President, there is indeed no country, not just in Africa, fellas, actually I think in the world, that you should be focusing your investment on. for Nigeria, the 5th largest country in the world. We're growing by 5 million annually, and our people will shape and form the core of the global workforce. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You did a great job. Thank you so much. Moving swiftly on, it's my pleasure to introduce our next item on the agenda. We are going to be looking at a segment titled From Reform to Return, Investing in Nigeria's Trade Infrastructure Corridors. And for that discussion, I'd like to welcome to the stage the following people. Firstly, if we can have Ms. British Robinson, who is the Africa Chair at Milken Institute, who will be our moderator. Then we have, of course, if I'm allowed to say, my favorite person in the room, actually. We do have coming to the stage Mr. Sumaila Zubairu, who is, of course, the CEO and President of Africa Finance Corporation. You're welcome, sir. Next up, we have Mr. Karim Mujrem, who is the Managing Director of Sky Capital. You're most welcome, sir. Then we have Mrs. Yvonne Ike, who is representing Bank of America. You're welcome, madam. Finally, to the stage, I welcome Mr. Wole Abu, who is the Managing Director of Equinix. I will leave you in the trusty hands of your moderator.
Well, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to say it because it's what we do in Africa, all protocols observed. I'm thrilled to be part of this incredible panel. This panel really is to talk about bankable projects, how term sheets have been finalized, and how we can close transactions. But also for investors here in the room, we want to make sure that you understand that Africa is the best bet, that Nigeria is the best bet, and there's opportunity to do well and do good and to actually get a return on your investment, which is the conversation I was having this morning with a number of US foundations trying to get them to move their money off the sidelines. So let's talk about moving your money off the sidelines once and for all. I'm really getting tired of having this conversation. I'm hoping one day we finally turn the corner. So let me start, Samala, let me first start with you as the CEO, President of AFC. Your leadership has been incredible. I know that firsthand as a donor and as a partner. You have financed so many transformative infrastructure projects, from the Dangote refinery to the Kano Dorado rail project to Walter Smith refinery to the MTN digital backbone. We were just talking about digital. Nigeria truly leading the way in that space. Your portfolio spans everything from mining to industrial to digital to true bankable projects. Can you just share with us a few lessons learned that can draw new investors into these deals? We want people to be a part of the full capital stack at whatever level that they can be. Thanks.
Thank you very much for having me, and thanks for co-convening this event with the Federal Ministry of Trade and Investment. So I'd like, with a few comments about the Nigerian opportunity. You know, and I mean, you've heard all about it and how the reforms are working with the growth that we're seeing. I want to talk about a few things that I've not heard. So, you know, 3 years ago we had this aspiration of creating $1 trillion economy, and that kind of drove a lot of the policies, a lot of the reforms. Our recent GDP rebasing actually revealed a very different picture, and I want to draw attention to that. So the recent GDP rebasing actually revealed a $2 trillion economy, you know, and I want people to be aware of that. It showed how services has grown significantly and can be the bedrock for even further growth in the economy. It also showed the potential. I mean, the Minister of Mines is here, so he's going to talk about it. You know, in the mining space as well, particularly the fact that we have significant rare earth in Nigeria, and without much done, we're already, I think, number 5 in terms of rare earth production globally, and it only shows what is possible. I draw attention to this because there's a lot of scramble and conversations right now about rare earths, you know, and It's in abundance in Africa. It's in abundance in Nigeria. The minister talked about digital, and that's also another area where we have significant growth, because Nigeria's 230 million people, a lot of them spend time on their phones. And growth is in how people use their phones. So that's another area I want people to focus on. Of course, we are mainly an infrastructure bank, and all these projects mentioned are infrastructure projects. We continue to look at that, but we are increasingly looking at digital, because of the significant leapfrog opportunity we have there for both job creation and also for Nigeria to really occupy its pride place in the Community of Nations. So I want us to be very open-minded about the Nigerian opportunity and to look at it beyond just the physical infrastructure, look at the digital, and then look at the creative as well. Because that same GDP base told us about the opportunity there. And because of how, I would say, dominant Nigeria is already in the creative space, it shows that we can really grow that part of the economy as well.
So speaking of digital infrastructure, well, you've done some pretty massive deals. Equinix you have that landmark $320 million deal. You acquired Main One. So your investments in data centers and connectivity, just as the minister was saying, is really increasing the growth on the continent, but it's going to be so important not only for Nigeria, but for the entire continent, frankly, and you're truly leading the way. So how does Equinix view opportunities in the market, and how are you continuing to position the company as this leader in not only the digital backbone in Nigeria, but across the continent? I mean, this is significant, and congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. We've heard all the numbers around Africa rising, around Nigeria's potential, and we know from what the minister just left us with, there's a huge upsurge in AI now that's going to drive and redefine what we know about civilization. And Equinix acquisition positions us in Africa as one of the largest digital infrastructure providers across the continent, and globally. So what we're doing is that there are now rails into Africa for global business, and likewise an outlet for African companies to come to the digital space. On top of that, we also support universities, centers of excellence. We partner with them to develop the kind of curriculum that will be useful to us and the industry at large. We do that all across the world, and particularly in Nigeria. We're doing that with the Pan-Atlantic University, the University of Lagos, where we are domiciled. We have also the 3-entity project. We have an internship program in the works where we take certain people from there and give them live demos. And we have a digital twin of our data centers where people can safely operate, know how data centers operate, how they design, how they function in real life. So those are the kind of things we do.
Thank you for that. I think it's really important because when you're looking for outside investors, they want to make sure that you have the human capacity as well. So I appreciate that additional background. Kareem, I'm going to turn to you. If I can ask the folks in the back of the room to be a little quieter so we can hear the panelists. Thank you. I'm not sure that worked, but anyway. Kareem, I'm going to turn to you. Sky Capital, huge investment. You recently structured a $750 million Lagos-Calabar highway covering 7 countries, speaking of regional and corridor and infrastructure, which we know is so important. Opening up connectivity, fresh opportunities for business, fresh opportunity for jobs along that corridor. Significant. So what was the secret sauce in structuring this innovation, and how did you reach close? Because that's not easy.
It wasn't easy to say the least, but Samantha touched based upon the issues and difficulties in structuring transactions. And I think that we have spoken about reforms, we have spoken about economic indicators, we have spoken about growth, but clearly the government has been extremely transparent in its communication. The federal government has came into one in terms of implementing the priority project of Mr. President and the administration. We have seen the Lagos Calabar has been announced day one as a priority project. It has been implemented rapidly. The President has came and inaugurated the first 30 kilometers. So it has become palpable project. And when you connect from Eleko to Victoria Island, you know better, in 20 minutes when we are connecting in an hour and a half, it renders things much easier, it renders things less costly, and it renders things much more visible to international community. Back to the transaction itself, the project has accelerated, and we have gone through the entire process of FEC and Bureau of Public Procurement approvals. This has given transparency to the market. It has given transparency in terms of communication of both the Minister of Finance and Minister of Public Work, that management office. The contractor has been selected on the basis of its capability in terms of CRCP technology, which is a new technology which needed less, which have a lifespan not much longer than asphalt. And we have also made sure that all the environmental, social impact studies are done according to international standards.
So just to shift gears, Yvonne, you're the only other female on the panel with myself, to state the obvious, and a dear friend and partner, former partner and current partner. Yvonne, you are head of all of Middle East and Africa for Bank of America, representing the U.S. Bank. And I know you are bullish on Nigeria, not only because you are Nigerian, but you're also bullish on the continent. And I'd like you to take a few minutes to provide some examples of investments Bank of America has made in Nigeria. But really, I want you to widen the aperture and tell us about the overall investment theory that Bank of America has for the continent, because I think it's extremely important. As everyone here has given exact examples, but I wanted to widen the aperture with you around the investment theory and the best bets, particularly from a U.S. bank, because I had someone tell me at the Milken Institute, does BOA invest in Africa? And I said, oh yes, they do.
Thank you very much, British. So yes, I'm proudly Nigerian, and I can tell you that 3 years ago, part of my strategy was not to touch Nigeria with a barge pole on many levels. The things that we did were less commercial and more about supporting in things like human capital development. I'll come back to that. But we just, because of the central bank regime at that time, because of some of the policies in place at that time, we could not, with full confidence, deal in the market. So when I speak about the Nigeria that we see today, I don't speak about it just as from the lens of a Nigerian. I speak about it from the lens of a commercial business person who's leading a franchise that is US-based. And so what we see today is an economy that is very well undersold. And what that really, and what we are seeing really is an economy that has the potential, as Samila said earlier, definitely to be a $2 trillion economy. And here is why. The areas around manufacturing, infrastructure, agriculture are being fixed. The potential around technology, energy, critical minerals, and the creative sector are being built on. It's being built on a thesis that we believe in, and many people who've spoken to me know this, that Technology will be our fourth industrial revolution. We continue at Bank of America to support this and invest in this space. Most people wonder, Bank of America in Nigeria, really? Okay, so part of what we do is, because we're investment bankers and because when we just do not go in at the first level of risk, you will not see us at the forefront. But let me tell you, Airtel, a company that is doing very well and has proven management and track record, we have lent hundreds of millions of dollars to them, or we made it available to them right now as we speak. Move, a company that did not exist, I'll safely say 10 years ago, probably 5 years ago, shifting and changing the way that people access, leverage technology to drive mobility. We leveraged our platform to introduce them to raise $75 million from Uber for them. It's not the cash that counts, it's the connectivity and building on that relationship and helping them drive through that. Today, Move is now worth $1.4 billion and rising. And this is a company, and if we then look at the data center sector, while he pointed it out, we're still way behind on our data center infrastructure. We're working with one of the largest Pan-African data center companies today to help them restructure, to recapitalize their business, to make sure that they're very well positioned to take advantage of that wave that is coming and that will drive technology. We're also, in the energy sector, we're very excited about an interesting evolution. IOCs are divesting out of some of their investments. I say some because they're divesting and they are investing. This is the story that is not being told. But where they are investing, the exciting thing is that local companies are coming into that space. We are making it our duty to introduce those companies to international investors who do have the money, who do have the appetite. And we are seeing a lot of traction with some of those local companies. One of the most exciting things that I did in my career, this was not when I was at Bank of America before, was to be part of taking Seplat to the international markets. And when I look at where Seplat is today, having acquired the assets that Mobil sold, and when I look at where Renaissance Energy is, and the introductions that we're making to some of these parties, I'm very excited by it.
Please join me in thanking the panel. Fantastic.
So we're very glad that you could join us here today. So let me start with you, E. E, you are, I guess, a celeb in the tech world, but more importantly, you've helped create not one, but two unicorns. And now you're building infrastructure that can power a lot more. So a year ago, I remember, I was under a year ago today, I think, AFC committed to Etana, to funding that. So why don't you tell us briefly what Etana is about, and why that might be interesting to investors that are in the tech space today.
Fantastic, thank you very much. So I know everybody calls it Etana, but it's actually Etona, which means light. But it's fine. I think we have to make it an international word so that people can access the word. But the genesis of Etona was our experience with building these billion-dollar companies from Nigeria, making the bold decision to build these companies from Nigeria. But we had to make one compromise that always bothered us, which was that the businesses had to be incorporated in Delaware. And this has become the norm for now about 40,000 businesses. And we started to wonder, this is a systemic risk. And every now and then we would come close to the systemic risk that represented, whether it was Mercury shutting down our bank accounts, which is an experience many startups can identify with, or sometimes policy changes that made life a little bit more difficult, which I think is a more recently occurring thing. And we started to think, well, if we're going to build an industry that's going to be hundreds of billions of dollars over the next couple of decades, what can we do to make sure we have a more solid footing? And like I like to tell people, Eternal was supposed to be our, you guys are impacting me. Eternal was supposed to be our grounding, our foundation for building that foundation. And the big idea is, we know Nigeria is big and complicated and somewhat difficult to wrangle when it comes to policy, because we're a country of many different tribes, many different terrains, many different layers and levels of development. But what if we created one special economic zone that was dedicated to the digital economy? Welcome, Wenmore. That was dedicated to the digital economy, and whose entire raison d'etre was to make it easy for companies like Andela and Flutterwave, like Move, to start, grow, and scale. And so that's the idea. We're bringing three things together with Eternal. We're bringing policy, which is key. Honorable Minister has been extremely generous in supporting us with the right policy frameworks, which we're still working through to be able to make sure that the next Andela or Flutterwave can be incorporated, banked, and scaled in and from Nigeria. The second thing is infrastructure. Through support from AFC, we now have a $100 million, 30,000 square meter campus project that we're building. That's about 3 hectares in Alaro City, which is in the Lagos Free Trade Zone. We're going to be shovel ready Q3 of next year. And the last thing is where we started, which is building a community. And today we have about 3,000 plus founders from all over the world, and particularly from the continent. Also those foreigners who want to do business on the continent, who have joined the Eternal Digital Residency, which is basically a way for us to get together and enable and support young people, entrepreneurs, large businesses that want to be on the continent and want a better policy environment to do business on the continent.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I was going to start with you, actually, because we're very excited about the work you're doing. But Isusu is really a powerful example of diaspora-led, innovation and how you're scaling in the US. Would love to hear from you a little bit about what Isusu is doing in the US, tell the people in the room what Isusu is doing, but also share some lessons in terms of what sort of enablers allowed you to thrive and how we can take those lessons to Nigeria and have startups scale in that way.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think Isusu's journey, I grew up in Lagos and went to secondary school in Lagos and came to the United States for college. And when I came here, I wanted to borrow money to go to school. But when we walked into one of the biggest banks in the United States, in Minnesota specifically, we were turned away because we didn't have a credit score. And I had to go borrow money from the predatory lender at over 400% interest rate here. And that's sort of, has always stuck with me, that we have a system that treats you like you're guilty until proven innocent, and I wanted to do something about it. So I went to the private sector in the States and spent time at PricewaterhouseCoopers and Goldman Sachs. We focused on buying and selling companies, did that for over $50 billion in transactions. And quit my job and said, look, how do we build solutions for folks that are immigrants or folks that have poor credit scores and improve it? In the US, there are roughly 110 million people that rent. They send on an average $1,100 to $1,200 to their landlords every month. If you do that math, that's close to 1.2 to $1.4 trillion every year. And that data didn't show up on their credit score. So if you pay your rent, it doesn't show up, but if you pay your mortgage, it shows up on your credit score. So, I'm the kind of person that builds, this is my third company, I'm the kind of person that builds non-sexy businesses, so we're data plumbers. We take data from the landlord, we transform it, and then report it to make sure it shows up on people's credit scores. And Isusu has now gone on to work with $5 million in the US, 12 million people, all 50 states, and we see roughly $100 billion in rent volume every year. So the scale is there. To answer your question, I think there are three things I'm going to focus on. The policy environment really helps because I think government has a quintessential role to play. One of the biggest tailwind for us was when we say rental data should be included in people's credit scores, the government, especially in Washington, D.C., came in and said, how can we help accelerate that path? Because if you think about it, the biggest driver of wealth in this country is home ownership. But if you have a poor credit score, you can't get access to financial products. So the government created incentives for the clients that we work with and said, look, let's facilitate introductions to all the landlords we finance. And that happened for a long period of time and helped us be the largest aggregator of rental data. The second thing is the government then passed policy and said rental data will now be part of mortgage underwriting. The US mortgage market is close to $23 trillion. So think about every mortgage that is created in the US now, we are the largest aggregator of that data. We have the ability to provide it to folks, verify the information or provide the information. So that's another thing. I think policy making matters, but policy and execution is not just having the policy, but enabling startups to get there is crucial. And then the last thing that we've done has really, really helped us from an environment perspective is just a foresight on what's coming. So just transparency on, hey, these are some of the things that we're thinking about, and being an extension and providing advice. You can create policies, in the upper and the lower houses, but it's different from execution on the ground. So there's a level of collaboration, and this is what we are seeing, and how can things be adjusted so the letter of the law and the spirit of the law actually makes sense for entrepreneurs. So that's what has helped us become now the largest aggregator of rental data in America, and hopefully we'll find our way to Nigeria through acquisition.
Maybe just now pivoting over to someone that is actively doing a lot of work in the Nigerian economy, but doing it in a very creative way. I want to pivot over to you, Shay, who's doing some work in the payment space. Piazza has grown, I wouldn't say exponentially over the last few years. Can you tell sort of what you're to learn about Piazza, and then we can talk about the innovative ways you are, one, solving for getting finance to scale, but also solving solutions for people in Nigeria.
Thank you so much. Pretty much, I spent almost all my life in banking and then corporate finance. So, but Nigeria is full of the good, the bad. But what we're trying to do when we're setting up Piazza was this. So we want to set up an African institution that can play anywhere in the world. As in create an oasis of a strong corporate governance, financial model, and a technology company that can play anywhere where you can fit in. So for us, when we started, one of the things we look at is that how can we look at solving that problem? So the first thing we look at is that we look at the capital formation in Africa is very weak, and we told ourselves we're not going to raise any fund internationally. We're not going to do any of kudos to Win and all the like that. Don't Series A's, and we said we are not going to do that. We started business with a capital of almost about $5 million within ourselves. We grew the business, EBITDA and return on capital year on year about 30%. EBITDA in excess of about $25 to $30 million more. So fast track, one of the things we then did for ourselves was to do something which is very, very different from what is obtainable within our space. We then get ourselves a credit rating process. So the first thing that we did was to approach Data Pro, they look at our books, we audited by Deloitte, so look at our books, we got an investment grade rating. Second of which, we approached Moody's, which was a very, very huge step for us. We got through Moody's rating, we got an investment grade as well. The third one which we got was a Gusto, which was a very tough one for the team, based on our financials and our corporate governance and the way we run the business. So at the top point, fortunately, SEC approved us of almost about 100 billion, and we're able to go to the market. And what really speaks about Piazza's efficiency was when we did the first Series 1 repayment, because it has never been held there's a prejudice rating on Africa, there's a prejudice rating in technology space that these guys just get money and then go away with it. So the first repayment we did was almost about $25 million. The market get to know about it. The second repayment was done on Friday, about another $10 million, and like that, so that's what we've been doing. Piazza currently operates in almost about 20 countries, 17 of which is in Africa. We're licensed 2 years ago in the US. We have our license in UAE as well, and in Canada. That's all about it. And I think my colleague is there. We started the company together. Philips is over there, so that's what we're doing.
Finally, I want sort of all of you to speak to the investors in the room today and make our jobs easier. And just give them one reason, one sentence why the digital economy is the next frontier for them to come into Nigeria, and really why they should be. Well, they're a little bit late already, but why they should be coming in now.
Well, I mean, for me, I continually say our digital economy is unique across the continent and around the world because, unlike everywhere else, it is anchored on one thing, and one thing only that we have an abundance of, which is talent. And you're seeing that talent on this stage. Nigerian talent has the capacity to go toe-to-toe with people anywhere in the world. And this is not just our generation. I think we've been doing this for a long time in terms of Nigerian excellence. So if you're looking for to invest, if you're thinking about the who of investing and you're looking at where you can invest in the people that have the capacity to take on the world and win, I don't think you're going to find them in Nigeria.
For me, there's three things. Number one, I'm big on character formation. I'll tell you with this data, I think it was 3 weeks ago I was reading World Bank reports on repayment structure for the whole entire infrastructure. And then it is interesting to know that Nigeria is the second most repayment. I mean, Africa has the highest form of repayment, followed, and the first was 1.9% of that's Middle East, then followed by Nigeria. I mean, Africa, I'll say Nigeria. So I'll say Africa, then is the second. And then you will see a continent like Western Europe on almost 9%. So the character is there compared to what you hear about us. So we repay, we're very fantastic. Case in point, we see we are the very IMF. So we are very, very good place to just come from. We are very serious. And secondly, I talked about the strength of every vision is tested by the strength of your structure. So if you see Nigeria, we have almost about 36 states. You can see that there's a structure that put in place in Nigeria. So I've done business across so many countries. The last time I went to a particular country, I was telling my country manager that I would not like to talk to any branch manager or bank, but I would like to talk to the central bank because I can see that there's no structure. The only person that can understand my English is so you can understand that there's a structure in Nigeria. The third one is that we are very, very resilient. I'm very sure I don't know where any size of I should have done. I personally have done almost about 180 something flights this year. You will have done over, he was calling me from Monday, Amsterdam, was jumping up and down. We have been also together, very, very hard working. So we know the importance of work ethic. So we are not set up jokers. So if you are looking for where to put your money, because the only money answers to people who are hardworking. You don't really know God, you pray. If you you are not hardworking, just for, you might not be intelligent, but if you're hardworking, you will get the results.
I think for me, as someone that went to secondary school in Nigeria and came here, the thing for Nigeria and a digital environment is the math has no pain. We have 250 million plus people, the largest population on the continent. To actually survive in Nigeria, to wake up every morning and do the things you need to do. I tell people what I went through in federal government college in China. Look at me like, man. But I think the number of people we have, the talent is incredibly immense. Look at our GDP, look at what the government is doing to turn things around. And then above all, just look at the number of billion-dollar companies we buy on the continent, and even in the United States, that happen to be black. It's mostly Nigerian. So, in my mind, we don't need to sort of evangelize ourselves everywhere. The number speaks for itself, and the excellence and the exceptionalism of Nigeria, the math has no opinion. That's the beautiful thing about what we have going for us. But there's a lot of things that we need to do to believe in ourselves. I remember when Isuzu raised $130 million in our last round of financing, and the company was valued at $1 billion. And I called my mother and was like, "Hey, Mom, we just raised all this money." And she's like, "Oh, my son, how's the wedding planning coming along?" But so, it's my, she's thinking about the next generation, and still calls my wife and say Happy Mother's Day. But the most important thing I want us to just employ us to do, Nigeria is the greatest country on the continent of the African continent, no doubt about that. The number speaks for itself. I want to employ us to think big. We gotta think big. We're not, Nigeria is too big for small dreams. Nigeria is too big for small dreams. We gotta think big and do what we've been ordained to do, which is to win unapologetically.
I have nothing else to add. Thank you very much for joining us.
The most important thing is that it's partnership, so it's not really about what Nigeria is doing, it's about what Nigeria and the US are doing together, collaboratively, to make sure that as G2G, as government to government, we're supporting our private sector on both sides of the Atlantic to generate prosperity. So we have a commercial investment partnership that we started off in June of 2025, working on 3 key sectors: agriculture, infrastructure, and technology. And so we're facilitating business-to-business activities. We have follow-up meetings at the end of August, and we have another ministerial at the end of November. And so we continue to foster closer strategic ties to deliver for the private sector. Well, in our opinion, Nigeria is open for business. Mr. President, as the President of Nigeria, has made it clear in the last 2 years, Nigeria has delivered significant reforms for the business climate, and investors, both at home and abroad, domestic investors and foreign investors across the world, have reacted very positively, responded, in fact, to the improvement in the Nigerian economy. So we continue to value our strategic ties with the US. We're looking forward to the US administration's body language. We're looking forward to what happens post-AGOA, should AGOA not be renewed, and we'd like to see what comes out of it. And so Nigerian businesses are doing business with the US counterparts. We continue to have a vibrant relationship. Also at a G2G level, collaboration and engagement continues. And so to us, the future is bright.